This afternoon at about 1 o'clock really felt like riding my bike. The weather is so nice now and I love being alone out in the woods away from everyone, so it was perfect. I pack up a notebook, a pen, always on hand in case of inspiration, and a big bottle of water and head off into the woods. The opening is so tiny against the vast dense forest you have to know exactly where it is to find it. It always seems spooky and mystical because it's just this black almost doorway looking void amidst this mountain of trees and underbrush. I speed down the hill as usual and in a couple of seconds reach the crossroads. One goes forward into the thickest parts of the forest, the left goes towards the city and highway, and the right goes out into the open endless fields and farmland with the big patches of forest spread throughout. I sat there for a little bit, took a swig of water and head right. I haven't been out very far past the fields before and have a day to kill, so I keep going and going and going. The open fields and the huge pastures, past the familiar broken down railroad checkpoint or whatever it is, past the one single house that lies just outside the trail, past the huge rusting metal bridge. So I'm going and going and going and eventually see a beware sign nailed to a tree, then another, then a couple altogether nailed to an old busted phone line, and finally a huge wooden barricade that says "Stay Out." Pig related, except imagine thicker and the trail like 20 feet higher than the tree bases. The thing was already pushed partially out of the way like someone had been in before me, and being the rebel that I am, I just had to see what was back there, something I soon came to regret. So I am riding again and the forest is far thicker than before, and on each side of the trail about 4 inches out it drops right off, steep as fuck and deadly, that's for sure. At this point I'm a bit uneasy as it is completely silent, not a fucking sound. I mean, this is deep, thick forest, why am I not hearing any animals? Immediately after this realization I come upon an opening finally. Down below it's now swampy and dark, the trees are far and few between and rise out of these deep dark pools of water. I'm creeped out at this point. It's eerie as fuck out here, totally alone, and getting tired. I start crossing this very sketchy old wooden bridge, slowly, and then hear this deep low grumble and immediately pause. Nothing but eerie empty silence, not a fucking sound all around me. I then carefully start again and realize it's just my tire, the fucking thing has gone flat. I have no idea how I didn't realize this earlier at any point in my trip. I mean, it was totally and utterly dead. Then I hear this dreadful fucking blood-curdling scream tear through silence. I'm fucking teary-eyed and have goosebumps as I tell this. I am frozen, have no idea what it was, no idea where it was, and of all fucking times my tire is fucking flat as a 9-year-old Chinese boy. A stick breaks and immediately I whip my bike around and started pedaling my fucking ass off. All of a sudden start hearing shit crashing in the woods and don't dare fucking look out there. I am swerving all over this shitty trail because it is covered in pebbles, holes, cracks, broken branches and all kinds of other shit that can all totally kill me at this speed. And somehow before I didn't see these clumps of white stringy fur all caught in the trees and along the trail. The sounds of something racing through this dense thick brush are so loud I can hear it over my horrendously obnoxious flat tire squishing and squashing on the ground as I am almost spinning the chain off the gear. At this point a million things are racing through my mind. My legs are absolutely burning from riding so far out into the woods and now blazing back on this goddamn tire. Fuck. I swerved right on the edge of the trail and the sandy pebbly shit went flying out into the trees, jumped over a huge godhole and heard another loud ass scream. That didn't even faze me at this point. I am just pounding my legs, breathing so hard my chest hurts and waiting for my tire to explode at any moment and to finally get eaten by whatever the fuck is chasing me. I just miss the barricade, literally centimeters from crashing headfirst into the thing. Finally see a light off in the distance. I'm close to getting back on the fields and back towards home. I'm filled with a new wind of energy and kick it in hyperdrive now. The sounds of crashing are now getting softer, slower, then stop. I fucking made it. I finally made it. I zoom right out into the sunlight. I've never been happier in my fucking life to feel the sun in my eyes. At that moment I just stop, the fatigue just immediately hits me like a wave. I'm dead fucking tired and couldn't move another inch. I turned my head around to look back at whatever the fuck was there, and in the darkness see two red burning eyes just staring right at me. I felt my entire body go cold. Then in a flash they were gone. I rode back as fast as I could, but eventually slowed down and crawled my way all the way back. I downed what little bit of water I had left, and even though it was hot I wasn't sweating one drop. I was literally frozen from that stare. Did I see a fucking goatman? Tomorrow I'm getting a gun license and buying a shotgun and never going out into those woods again. Fuck, I'm even considering moving into a city away from any wooded areas. I'm gonna dump one of my stories for y'all. I'll leave it up to you to believe it or not after your own mind, but for me this was the biggest nope moment I've had. Some background first. This happened in Boden, Sweden, a couple of years back. Boden is known for one thing, and one thing only: military forts. It was long thought of as the key to northern Sweden, the first thing the Sovs would roflo stomp if they ever came charging. Those forts were secret as fuck in the past, and for some time one of the forts were used to store a large part of Sweden's gold reserve. However, after the Cold War ended, the forts became even more obsolete than before and were decommissioned. Anyway, the story. B21. Hang out with female friend that is more like the sister I never had. We are both scouts and have been for as long as we both can remember. Bored as fuck. Decide to go recon a cool campsite for the coming Halloween scare hike. My friend, let's call her H, knows a lot of cool old forts and trench systems. Drive off in my car, which was perfectly fine and had gone through inspection without a hitch only a week before. Decide to check out the nearest old fort. Park the car a couple of 100 meters from the old fort because someone had placed big ass stones as a crude roadblock on the dirt road leading to the fort. The fort is dug like Pik related, with the exception that only there is no road up to the fort. Pik is another fort near Boden. Walk. Climb up to the fort from the right slope that's somewhat accessible. Any thoughts of recon for a campsite has soon been replaced by thoughts of exploration. It's about midday but the daylight is waning fast due to northern Sweden. Luckily we brought flashlights. Eventually locate a hole in the fence big enough for us to get through. Explore a bit, though all doors are locked either with massive padlocks or internal locks. Start to head back the way we came in. A thick door that we both were sure had been closed before is now slightly ajar. Not by much, just a couple of centimeters. We haven't heard any door opening or anyone else being here. This is a door about 1.5 meters wide, 2.5 meters tall, and made entirely out of 1 decimeter of solid steel. And on rusty hinges it looks like. Remember that H told me before that the local wildlife seems to shun this place. Okay. Getting a real bad feeling about this right now. We both keep our distance but our curiosity gets the better of us. We both try to peek inside. Pitch fucking dark inside. Except I sense something moved inside. Don't really know how I know this, but I just got a very weird feeling. Like something is staring at us from inside. We both aim our flashlight and thumb them on. Flashlights both give a short burst of light and then go dead as doorknobs. And we put in new batteries before we went out. In the short picosecond we have light, I managed to get a glimpse of something. A gray blackish humanoid shade that looks more like a beast than a man. At the same time something in my mind pushes the primal predator panic button. Nope nope nope. I'm not sure what H saw, but she is white as a fucking sheet and as damn near panicked as I have ever seen her. We both scramble out without saying a word to each other. We both must have broken the record on 200 panic sprint. Don't know about H, but I felt something. Can't describe it more than a terrible sense of hate following us. Get in the car. I turn the key. Nothing. Try to turn it again. The car won't start. The headlights won't even turn on. Eventually, after turning the key frantically again and again for the longest 2 minutes in my life, the car starts. We get the hell out of Dodge with gravel flying everywhere as I floor it until we get back on the main road. Later learned through other friends that there has been other similar occurrences there, some hearing a faint but very much mocking laughter coming from beyond that door and others feeling watched when they are near the fort. The door has never been ajar before or after though, and it has always been locked when anyone has tried to open it. Damn, I still get the shivers just by thinking of it. And it has been 5 years since that happened. I can add that neither H nor I have been back inside the fence of that place. I have a few. If y'all like this one, I'll post more. Be 2 years ago. Dicking around with Polish friend. Head on to Hidden Wiki, Anon-chan, etc. On Anon-chan, some dude posts a link and some Cyrillic script with lots of exclamation points. Luckily enough, my buddy reads Russian. Translates it. It's up again, hurry. Fuck it, why not? Click the link. Hey race, what we saw. 3 dudes in military uniforms, shown only from the neck down. Speaking excitedly and super high-pitched, nervously in Russian. Friend reads Russian better than he speaks it, but he catches a few phrases. Basically, these guys are scared and excited, they're getting another one, etc. Eventually it becomes clear that they're out on the ice in some random ass lake in Siberia, ice fishing. After a few minutes of nervous chatter, fucking assault rifles start going off. Camera swings around wildly, eventually focusing on a poorly lit hole in the ice. Gurgling and splashing noises coming from it. These dudes, and others, are just straight pumping bursts down the hole. Eventually, after another few minutes, these dudes use long hooked poles to dig around and then heave something up. Shit you not. 20+ foot long fish like snake looking fucker, at least 3.5 feet in diameter. I'd say it was an anaconda, but it was brown and it had really nasty, flabby fins that they grabbed and stretched out, full of sea lice and holes and shit. Big black eyes, mouth full of the gnarliest teeth have ever seen. Huge air sacs on its underside, looked like a lungfish or some shit. Video cuts to a series of photos of the thing, better lit than the video, presumably because they're shot with flash. Mottled brown skin with plenty of blood smeared all over it, from the bullets, scraping the sides of the hole they pulled it out of. One of the pictures showed what I'm guessing was the contents of its stomach, and there was all sorts of crazy shit in there. Don't go swimming in Russia. Move into house in the outback in South Australia in 2005. Pretty much every single person living in our street had only lived there for under 5 years. Apart from an elderly couple that lived at the end of the street. This elderly couple had lived in the street for 40 years, and had raised their children in the street. They said strange things happened in the street, and a lot of people can't handle it and leave. They never really went into what scared people, just saying the whole street was haunted or something like that, but they did say it only started happening in the early 90s. First experience I had was a week after moving in. I heard a low-pitched humming sound coming from outside my bedroom window. When I looked out, I saw this tall black figure with long arms and long fingers, with no facial features. He was slightly transparent. He was backed up against the wall holding up the garage area of my house. Due to its height he had to hunch over. I was looking out for around 5 seconds before it realized I was looking at it, turned its head towards me, and I quickly ran away from the window and ran and told my parents. My dad went out and saw nothing was there. I sketched what I saw. Pig related. I started hanging out with the neighborhood kids. We were all teenagers, and they told me their stories, and all described the same figures I had seen. One of the kids was Aboriginal, and we would go visit his grandfather a lot. He called the entities Mele-mulla, which translated roughly to stranger man. He said that the Aboriginals in the area had been dealing with them long before the arrival of Europeans, and said that they weren't of the land, which kind of meant they didn't belong there or weren't native to there, and that they would take children away and eat them. He said that the Aboriginals cast them behind the creek, but since the creek partially dried up, the Mele-mulla had once again been able to get into the town. The town that I lived in was built directly over the previous Aboriginal settlement. This Aboriginal tribe wasn't nomadic, and had remained in a small area for over 1,000 years. One day me and my friends were playing cricket out on the flat patch of desert in between the road and my house. The sun was setting, and as we were packing up our stuff we noticed that there were people off in the distance approaching the road. The closer they got, the more details we could see, and we noticed that they were fully black, tall, and that they weren't walking but floating. We could also hear a low-pitched humming sound that got louder the closer they got. We bolted back to my house, and told my parents, but my parents once again didn't believe us. I hassled my father enough to drive down on his motorbike to the area we saw them approaching. After 9 minutes he came back to the house, visibly shaken, saying he saw them, and that I wasn't to go down there anymore. Every time I tried to get details on what happened he would always change the subject. One night I was coming home from a party with my friends, and as we passed the empty lot in the street we saw these two small figures sitting on tree stumps, just staring at us. One was bigger than the other, and once again we heard a low-pitched humming sound. We were all high as fuck and were just standing there, laughing, thinking we were tripping out, until we realized that we were all seeing the exact same thing, and we couldn't all be hallucinating the same thing. One of my mates took a step towards the one closer to us, and when he did it made this very deep growl. I had never heard anything like it, and to make a long story short we screamed and ran to my house. I'm mentioning this because unlike the tall figures I had seen, and I'd see them a lot at night, these things were completely physical, and not transparent. They were shaped like babies but didn't have a neck. Now this is where shit heats up. There used to be a group of kids that would take their dirt bikes beyond the creek, and would go riding way out in the desert. One day they didn't come home and everyone assumed they had just gotten lost. They were found a week later, all 5 of them. They were alive, with no food and no water, out in the Australian outback for a week. What scared me was what one of the kids' younger brother told me. He said that his brother had said they saw a light out in the desert, and they felt compelled to follow it. He said he felt like he was in a trance, and they didn't stop following this light for the entire week they were out in the outback. He said no matter how far they kept traveling they didn't seem to get anywhere close to it. He said if the farmer that found them hadn't have found them they never would have stopped following the light, and eventually would have died. Anyway, getting to the final part of the story. So my mother had gotten sick of me being scared all the time, and called her sister who lived in Adelaide to come visit. She's a psychic or something. So she comes down, and the moment she pulls up she tells us not to tell her anything about what we've seen, and that she's going to wander around the street for a while and come back and tell us what she saw. When she came back she was visibly shaken. She told me that these things were unlike anything she had ever experienced, and that she had also run into the spirit of an old Aboriginal woman. The woman told her that her tribe were a split-off group from the Dharawal and came to the area that would become the town I lived in to escape the Mele-mulla, but the Mele-mulla followed them. The woman then showed her horrific images of these things slaughtering Aboriginal children, and eating them through a small slit in their mouth. The woman then told her she drowned herself in the creek so she would act as a spiritual barrier to keep the Mele-mulla out. She said this worked until a pyramid-shaped pathway was built facing the way the Mele-mulla had come from. This allowed them to come in once again, not the fact that the creek had dried up. The Aboriginal woman led my auntie down the path to show her something even more terrifying. After eating the small children, they would revert these kids, to be their minions or some shit. My auntie said these beings are completely physical, and live out in the desert, and sometimes come into the town for food. She said these things are harmless, and mainly just keep an eye on people for the Mele-mulla. My auntie became confused. and said if they were killing children just to make them into spies, then what was their motive in the first place? It was explained to her that the Mele-mulla just seemed intent of inflicting pain and suffering on people. She said that they rape women and men alike, make women miscarriage, cause accidents, and kill the weak. Despite this, they seem to have a personal vendetta against the Aboriginal woman's tribe, and seem intent on wiping them out. This is why they remain focused on the town. My auntie came to the conclusion that the Mele-mulla aren't human spirits, and aren't spirits at all. She believed that they were a physical, reproducing race of beings and are most likely aliens. She said she had heard of similar beings all around the world. After hearing all of this, we put the house on the market, and began preparations to leave. A couple of days before we left, I went on one last motorbike ride where my father had told me not to go. While riding along a dirt path, I saw this rock on the side of the path. It was weird because it looked like was smoothed down a bit, and had some markings on. I don't know if it's related at all to what had been happening. I personally think it's someone playing a joke because none of the engravings on are Aboriginal, and the engravings on are all over the place. Anyways, I took it with me when we moved. Pig related. So yeah, this is my experience with the paranormal. Thought I'd share it with you all, and it'd be great if someone else had an experience like this that they could share. Rock with the engravings outlined. Gotcha mate, he's going to send more when he decides to not be a lazy fuck. (2008) Grew up poor. Have to share room with big sis. Room is tiny, so we're really bitching about having each other's stuff in our zones. She gets the huge plant leaf thing from IKEA with her allowance that she saved up. Hangs it on the wall between our beds, so it's kind of like a partition. First night it's up, I'm staring at it from the bed. Sort of at an angle, so I'm looking partially underneath, if that makes sense. It makes a really weird shadow on the ceiling that looks like someone looking over the edge of it. It freaked me out, but I didn't say anything. Would just have gotten laughed at. Every night for like 6 months I look up at this thing and think how weird the shadow is. Can't figure out what it is, seemingly no cause for it. One night I'm looking at it and I almost convince myself I can see eyes. Almost like that reflection animal eyes have, but way duller. Actually getting kind of freaked out. Suddenly I hear from my sister's bed. You see it too, right? Both of us flip out and turn on the light. Of course nothing is there. Take the leaf down and try to forget about it. Turns out she'd been seeing it for months. Always in the same spot, always looking down at me. Live in an extremely old house. 3 stories including the attic. No one ever goes into the attic. Hasn't been opened in about 10 years. I sleep in a room that is under the end of the attic. Every night, I would hear thumps coming from upstairs. Like someone was walking around, or stomping. They were muffled, but I could hear them. Never think much of it, figure it's a heater kicking on or something, until a few years pass. We took all the carpet out of the attic, so it was bare wood floors. While it was open, I decide to go up and check out what's over my room. There was a noticeable indentation over the portion of carpet that is above my room. It's in the shape of 2 half circles that come to points, and about the size of my hand. After they ripped the carpet up to reveal the flooring that's over my room, we found a ritual circle. Pentagram with around 80 symbols surrounding it. All carved into the wood with dried blood and candle wax on each one. Now I'm really freaked out. All those years I've been hearing an actual thing stomp. After a few nights the thumps came back. This time, instead of a muffled thump, it was obvious something hard was banging on the wood floor. Sounds like hoofs clopping on a patio. After we removed the ritual circle they stopped for good. Still wonder what would have happened if I actually went upstairs during the stomps. 2007. My grandpa would never go in his attic. Would never tell us why. Me and siblings grew up not really questioning it. All of us just knew that Pop wouldn't go in the attic. Whenever he needed something from it, we'd go get it for him. Totally normal attic. Never got any spooky vibes from it. Years later, Grandpa dies. Died peacefully in his sleep. I go stay with my grandma to keep her company. One night we're up late talking about old memories. I bring up the attic in a story. Grandma gets really quiet. Asks if anyone ever talked to me about why he wouldn't go up there. Nope. JPEG. She tells me that when they first moved into the house, Pop couldn't sleep. He said something about the house just didn't feel right. He paced all night like he was crazy. Went over every inch of the house with a fine-toothed comb. Grandma is really worried but doesn't say anything. One night he goes up into the attic. She hears him start screaming. She sprints up to the attic and finds him curled up in a ball. He's sobbing. Grandma asks him what happened. He looks up at her and tells her he figured it out. He points to where the eaves of the roof narrow down toward the far end. She looks, there's nothing there. Then she looks closer and sees something she can't really describe or explain. All she could compare it to was origami. It was like space was folded up on itself. The angles were all wrong. She said when she looked at it she could feel herself going crazy, like something inside her was melting. She drags Popo down the stairs and puts him to bed. He sleeps for 2 days. When he wakes up, he says he'll never go into the attic again as long as he lives. Never says another word about it. Ignores Grandma when she brings it up. Grandma goes quiet and I don't say anything. We moved on to other stuff and she hasn't brought it up again since. Turns out most of my family knows. That part of the attic has always been blocked with a huge old bureau. Now I know why.